Good morning, and thank you for coming back. This is the 6th episode of Garden Path. I'm Christine Paxia, your host. So I have a question. What runs 30 miles, beginning at Gillette Stadium, and ends up in Boston? Well, if you've guessed Tom Brady, you're wrong. It's the Neponset River. Today, we will be taking you up the river with a paddle as we discuss the Neponset River with two members of the Milton Garden Club, Tucker Smith and Becky Simons, who will talk about protecting this natural resource that runs through our town. We'll follow it up with a 15-minute video. So welcome, Tucker and Becky.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tucker, you've been involved with the Neponset River for quite some time now. How did you get involved and what has been happening?
Well, Christine, I became involved really through the Milton Garden Club. And our club's relationship with the Neponset River began about 1995, 22 years ago. It's getting to be quite a while now. And at that time, we joined a coalition of conservation organizations to obtain ACEC status. That stands for Area of Critical Environmental Concern for the Neponset River estuary. And the estuary is the segment of the river that runs between the Baker Dam in Milton and the mouth of the river. And ecologically, it is its title. It is brackish, meaning salt and fresh water. They combine there, and it's very important ecologically. So we were successful in getting it designated by the state as an ACEC. And at that time, Natalie Albers, who was a longtime Milton resident, was club conservation chairman. And she had a thought that we should document the plant life that existed in the estuary. So Milton Garden Club hired a local naturalist who's still practicing in town today by the name of Tom Palmer. And Tom took over 200 slides in all seasons, all kinds of weather, and also wrote a scientific inventory of the plants that grew in the estuary, and it's called Flora of the Neponset Estuary, and it was published in 1997. So we were all jazzed up with this newfound knowledge and understanding of the estuary, and we had a desire to make people in Milton become more aware and more sensitive to it. So we created an exhibit in 1998 called Neponset Estuary, Wasteland or Wonderland. And it was great, but it only lasted a couple of days. So you work really hard, you produce something, and it's like, well, now what? Now what do we do with it?
Where was it displayed?
It was displayed at an exhibit or at a conference, really, at the Milton Husick Club. And it was open to the public, but it only lasted a couple of days. So we thought, for all the effort, the time, the expense to produce something like this, we should do something else. So we weren't going to let it just gather dust. So a group of volunteers came together who were education-minded in 1999 and created sort of the first Neponset River classroom curriculum. And with collaboration with the Milton Public Schools, we began to deliver it to all fourth graders in the town. And we revisit it, we try to keep it fresh, we try to keep the teaching, equipment and methodology current. The Conservation Committee did another exhibit in 2015, which was called Revealing the Neponset, Milton's Hidden River. And a video production became part of the classroom curriculum. And with climate change increasingly a reality, our Neponset is important as ever. And what it can do to safeguard the quality of our life here in Milton is as important as ever. And so we're committed to continuing the educational work.
Well, you do an amazing job with preserving and getting the word out there about conservation and this river, which is kind of snaking through our backyard and people aren't even aware of it.
That's right. Yeah.
So she mentioned that this program is taught to the fourth graders all throughout Milton, and it's something that you might have seen your children come home with information regarding, and that's what Becky Simons does. She goes to the 4th grade classes in Cullicut, Cunningham, and Tucker Elementary School with a packet of information and activities for all these students to enjoy. So Becky, why don't you tell us a little bit about this program?
Sure. Thank you, Tucker. I learned a few things from you actually a few minutes ago. We bring the Neponset educational program to the 4 elementary schools in Milton every year. So that means that we touch over 400 4th graders with this curriculum, and we do that with the help of Milton Garden Club volunteers. So if you look at a map of the Milton Neponset River Watershed, you see that it runs from Foxborough all the way up to Boston Harbor, and that there are 14 towns in the watershed, and Milton is one of them. And as Christine said, the Neponset River is 30 miles long, beginning in Foxborough, ending in Boston Harbor. When we go into the classroom, we start with that map and that explanation, and then we watch a video, which you will see after I finish talking. After we see the video, we break up into small groups with a Milton Garden Club volunteer member, and we do an abbreviated reading of Lynn Cherry's A River Ran Wild. And this book is actually about the Nashua River, but we have adapted it to be about the Neponset River. It's a story about many, many rivers in towns and cities throughout the United States. So the story begins with a pristine wilderness, and where there's no human inhabitants. And then the Native Americans come, and they live alongside the river, and they take from the river and from nature only what they need. And they live there for thousands of years. Then they're followed by the Europeans, who build farms along the river. And they end up forcing the Native Americans inland because they want to be near the river. Then comes the industrial age, and factories are built along the Neponset River and take advantage of hydropower, which is produced from man-made dams. And over time, we see factories making ammunition, such as gunpowder. We see tanneries producing lumber. We see paper mills. And we eventually have a chocolate factory.
Now we have condos.
And condos. No longer a chocolate factory, but condos, right. During that industrial time, harmful chemicals and toxins were freely released into the river, and the river became very polluted. So no habitat, no fish, no wildlife could really survive. Laws then were put into place which prohibited that the dumping of wastewater, and thus the conservation movement began to clean up the polluted Neponset. Efforts were put into place to protect native species and river habitat and wildlife. The Neponset River Watershed continues this conservation effort by sponsoring river cleanup days, water sampling, eradication of leaky septic systems and drainage pipes, and dam removal. After we finish reading the book, so that was kind of a summary of the book, we do a map activity. And the map we give each student is a map of Milton. And we ask the students to actually color in or trace the Neponset River, which runs along the east side of our town. And we ask them to, we also actually, before I go further into the map, we also send home a letter to the parents describing our visit, and it has a link to the video, which you're going to be seeing soon. And we include a word search as well. Just to give you a sample of some of the questions we ask on our curriculum sheet, we asked, for example, for the students to find their school on the map and color it. And then we use the map, and then we ask them to use the map scale to determine how far in miles their school is from the Neponset River. So these are some things that get them acclimated to where the river is.
Well, that's amazing stuff. And so when the kids go home, they go home with a packet of information and a new awareness of what's in their backyard and what they can do to help preserve this. And we're developing a new group of young conservationists, horticulturists, and just bringing them back to the environment and increasing that awareness. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to bring this program to the public today in Milton, is because it's a great program taught at the 4th grade level, and it's really worthy of viewing by anybody in this town, because you really need to be aware of what you do to your yard affects all the wildlife, including yourselves, throughout. So Tucker, what are some of the things that we can do moving forward to help continue to preserve and protect?
Well, there are many things that a homeowner or gardeners or citizens can do. Mainly is to be aware that it's there. It's right at our doorstep. Maintain healthy septic systems to avoid sewage contamination. Pick up your dog waste, or as the kids enjoy, the part in the video where it talks about dog poop. I mean, it's a pollutant. Leave no trace when you're using it recreationally. There's wonderful walking, biking, rowing, boating along. So be aware of oil spills, from your engine, or litter from your picnic, or if you're washing your car, things run down your driveway into the storm drain, and from the storm drain directly into the Neponset River.
All these things make a difference, and with all of these efforts that have been in place, with more attention on it, we've seen a comeback, and bald eagles now are resting in Milton Landing. So thank you, ladies, for joining us today in the studio. We are now going to watch a 15-minute video, 16, that was produced by the Milton Garden Club and is an award-winning video, and I hope you learn a little something today and become a little more aware and protect your environment. So thank you for tuning in.
Have you ever seen this river before? It's called the Neponset River, and it runs through Milton. The Neponset River is sometimes called the Hidden River because it flows behind houses, trees, fences, and even behind factories, stores, parking lots, and trolley tracks. We are members of Milton Garden Club, and we're passionate about nature and the outdoor world. We work together on projects to learn about our environment, just like you do when you learn about science. Today we will try to reveal the river for you so that you can go out to see and appreciate the Neponset once you learn more about it. We are going to learn more about the importance of conservation and how you can become a steward to take care of the river. The Neponset River begins in Foxborough, Massachusetts, right near Gillette Stadium. The beginning of the Neponset River used to be covered by a paved parking lot and was forced into an underground pipe called a culvert. It was not very natural and not good for wildlife. In 2002, Robert Kraft worked with conservation groups to uncover the river and bring it back to its natural state. Now it is much better for plants and animals and our environment. The Neponset River is about 30 miles long. The river ends in Boston Harbor near the famous gas tank with the rainbow swash in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. Lots of small streams flow into the Neponset. They are called tributaries. The Neponset River and its tributaries wind through 14 different towns: Foxborough, Medfield, Sharon, Walpole, Canton, Randolph, Stoughton, Norwood, Dedham, Dover, Westwood, Milton, Boston, and Quincy. Wow, that's a lot of towns. All of those towns make up the Neponset River Watershed. A watershed is an area of land that drains into a river. Everyone lives in a watershed, even you. Neponset Watershed covers about 120 square miles of land. Approximately 330,000 people live in our watershed, and 160,000 people get their drinking water right from the Neponset River. So where does the water come from? Whenever it rains or snows, water soaks into the ground, fields, and grasses, and then travels underground into streams, which go straight into the river. Water also runs off rooftops and pavement and other areas into storm drains alongside the road. This ground surface water is taken directly to the river by underground pipes. Water from all over Milton finds its way eventually to the Neponset River. Some of it collects in ponds or overflows into streams, which gradually flow downhill until it reaches the river. Imagine the Neponset River Watershed as a big bathtub, and the Neponset River is the drain. When water lands in this watershed, it will always drain into the Neponset River. Not far from Foxborough, the river widens and flows over one of more than 100 dams that are located along the Neponset River. A dam is a man-made obstacle that obstructs the natural flow of water or underground stream. This is a picture of the Walpole Dam. Certain kinds of fish, like rainbow smelt, river herring, American shad, and sea-run brook trout, live most of their lives in the ocean, but need to lay their eggs in freshwater rivers or streams. When fish swim upstream and reach a dam, they are blocked and can't lay their eggs. Dams are not good for fish. Lake Massapog is in the town of Sharon. Massapog means large water. The lake is used for swimming and boating. Lake Massapog is fed by an underground spring. It connects to Massapog Brook, a stream that flows into the Neponset River. Many small streams and brooks flow into the Neponset River. Here is a stream in Stoughton called Steep Hill Brook. The stream used to be very polluted because a factory nearby dumped toxic waste and sewage right into the stream. Today the factory is gone and the water is very clean. Lots of wildlife live in and around Steep Hill Brook. A train travels on the Canton Viaduct, a bridge that spans the small Canton River, which flows into the Neponset. It was built in 1834 and stands 65 feet high. In 1800, Paul Revere, you've heard of him, bought and renovated a former gunpowder factory on the Neponset River in Canton, near the viaduct, and turned it into the first American copper rolling mill. Rolled copper was used for many things. One use was on the bottom of ships, like the USS Constitution, to keep barnacles from growing on them. Rolled copper was also put on the dome of the Massachusetts State House in 1803. Before electricity, machinery that made products depended on water or hydropower, so many factories were located along rivers. How did the Neponset River get its name? The name Neponset comes from the Native American word Nepunshup, which means harvest river, because the river provided fish for them to eat and fertile soil to grow their crops. Native Americans, thousands of years ago, settled along the river shoreline because the river provided everything they needed: water, food, and transportation. They lived near the mouth of the river near Boston Harbor during the warm months. Here, they would plant corn, beans, and squash in the spring. They also ate shellfish, fish such as rainbow smelt and herring, and berries from along the riverbanks. After the Native Americans harvested their crops in the fall, they would canoe up the Neponset River to more sheltered areas for the winter. They settled in and around the Blue Hills. During the winter months, they lived on meat from animals and fish, and on the crops such as corn and beans that they had preserved from their harvest. Have you ever played soccer at Flatley Field? Fowl Meadow is located right across the street. It is upstream from Paul's Bridge. It is a wonderful habitat for birds. Another name for a bird is fowl. Fowl Meadow is named after a type of grass called fowl meadow grass, which makes a lot of seed and attracts birds that love to eat it. Bird watchers come from all over the world to look for birds in Fowl Meadow. Many species of birds have been observed there. You might see Canada geese, ducks, turkey vultures, hawks, woodpeckers, swallows, great blue herons, and many more. There is a walking and mountain biking trail through Fowl Meadow that starts at the small parking lot near Flatley Field. Paul's Bridge can be seen from Flatley Field. It is downstream from Fowl Meadow, which means it is closer to where the river ends in Boston Harbor. It was built with granite in 1849. A bridge has existed there since 1719, for almost 300 years. It crosses the river on Milton Street and joins Milton to the Reedville neighborhood of Boston. It is named after Samuel Paul. Mother Brook is a man-made canal that connects the Charles River and the Neponset River. Here's a photograph of Mother Brook as it runs behind the supermarket on Hyde Park Avenue in Hyde Park. It is a short way from where Mother Brook connects to the Neponset River as it runs along Truman Parkway. Early European settlers finished building the Mother Brook in 1641. They built the canal to help power a grist mill or grain mill. This area of the river separates Milton from parts of Boston and Hyde Park. Do you know where the gas station is on Canton Avenue? Or maybe Euland's skating rink? Pope's Pond is located near the field across the road on Sumner Street. It is named after J. Frank Pope, who operated an ice-making business there beginning around 1881. Ice boxes were used before people had modern refrigerators to keep their food from spoiling. The Iceman delivered ice blocks to people's homes. There are trails around the pond, which is part of the Pine Tree Brook Path. The pond is stocked with fish every spring. Pine Tree Brook begins in the Blue Hills at Hillside Pond and winds down through Pope's Pond and many neighborhoods until it finally ends in the Neponset River. The brook flows by Milton High School and then fills Turner's Pond and flows on to the Neponset. Turner's Pond was also used for ice making and is named after Jacob A. Turner, who created it by damming Pine Tree Brook where Canton Avenue and Brook Road meet. In 1884, Mr. Pope and Mr. Turner decided to work together and started a company called Pope and Turner to supply ice to residents in Milton and Dorchester. Turner's Pond is right behind the Glover School. Around June, sometimes a mother duck lays eggs in the courtyard surrounded by the school. When the eggs hatch, the mother duck leads her ducks through the hallways of the school and down to the pond. Teachers and students, sitting silently, form a path for the ducklings as they make their way to the pond. There is a lot of wildlife at Turner's Pond. Here's a wood turtle. Every spring, the pond is stocked with fish, and the town holds a fishing derby for youth in June. Do you know where this is? It is the end of Pine Tree Brook before it flows into the Neponset. Have you ever had pizza at Tino's? Or had your hair cut at Mackey's? Did you ever notice that Pine Tree Brook runs along the back of the building? Baker Dam is named after the Baker Chocolate Factory, the first chocolate factory in America, started in 1765, once employing over 1,000 people and producing 55 varieties of chocolate. Dams have existed at that site since 1634, when Israel Stoughton built one of the first grist mills in the New World to grind corn. Settlers bought corn grown by the local Narragansett Indians. All of these enterprises depended on hydropower before electricity. There are numerous dams in Milton. Unlike Baker Dam, most are so small you may not notice that they are there. There is another large dam in Milton called the Tileston and Hollingsworth Dam on Brush Hill Road. Many of these dams are very old, unsafe, or no longer serve any useful purpose, and studies are underway to consider removing some of the small ones. Baker Dam crosses the river between Dorchester Lower Mills and Milton Village. You can see it just upstream from the George Roper Bridge at Adams Street. There are no more dams downstream from Baker Dam, so all the water flows freely from there into Boston Harbor. Also at this point, the river is affected by tides, so the water reaches high and low points twice each day. There are lots of ways to enjoy the Neponset River. At Milton Landing, Milton High School's crew team uses the river to practice rowing. Someday, we may be able to swim safely in the river. The river upstream used to be very polluted from all the factories that used its water and emptied harmful waste into it. Many streams today are okay to swim in during dry weather, but there are still days when contamination levels are not safe, so it's best to canoe or kayak if you want to get out on the river. Before the Neponset ends in Boston Harbor and the Atlantic Ocean, it travels through an estuary. What is an estuary? An estuary is found at the mouth of a river where it meets the ocean. Salt water from the ocean and fresh water from the river mix together to create brackish water. It creates a wonderful habitat for many types of unusual animals and plants that can only live in a mixture of fresh and salt water. The estuary is considered to be one of the most important parts of any river. The Neponset Estuary is a specially protected area of critical environmental concern by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and there are special laws about building near there. Remember, the estuary is a mix of fresh water from the river and salt water from Boston Harbor. This crayfish is one of the many animals that needs the mix of salt water and fresh water to live. Here is the Neponset River flowing away from Milton towards Quincy before it enters Boston Harbor. This bike path is one of the best ways to see the river. You can access the trail at several places like the Central Avenue trolley stop or down near the wharf at Milton Landing. Try to observe the Neponset River before and after Baker Dam. See the waterfalls at Adams Street and then the wide open Neponset Estuary as you bike into Dorchester. You can learn a lot about plants and animals in the area from murals painted on several walls along the bike path. Kids like you helped paint these murals. You can get very close to the river on the bike path. Here are some walkers. Where do you think rainwater goes when it runs into the gutter in the street? Many people think the water drains into the sewer. That's wrong. Sewer pipes are separate and attached to the plumbing in your house. They carry our wastewater out to Deer Island in Boston Harbor. When water collects in the streets, it runs into a storm drain, a pipe that flows directly into a stream or river. Water runs off pavement and yards into the storm drains, often carrying chemicals from lawns, dog poop, and trash. So remember, if you litter, your debris will eventually end up in the Neponset River. This is a storm drain located in Pine Tree Brook. A scientist is checking the area during a dry period. You can see that a lot of stuff that doesn't belong in the river has somehow made its way into the storm drain. Here are some labels that were placed on storm drains to remind people not to put anything down the drain. Remember, it will go directly into the river. That's why it's important to throw litter in the trash can, not in the storm drain. A filter box is a way to clean water that runs off of pavement, here before it goes into Pine Tree Brook, which flows into the Neponset River. The soil in the box around the tree acts like a large filter. During a rainstorm, water flows off of parking lots, sidewalks, and streets into the storm drain. The tree filter box is placed near the storm drain so the water goes straight into the filter box first. The soil catches the oil and dirt that shouldn't go into the river. Here's a picture of the tree filter box being installed on the street near the storm drain. There are over 10 tree filter boxes on Brook Road between St. Mary's of the Hills School and Pierce Middle School. Here are some tree boxes on Lincoln Street across from Kelly Field. There are many ways we can all get involved in cleaning up the Neponset River. Notice the shopping carts. This was a cleanup near the river behind the Stop and Shop in Hyde Park. You can be a steward to protect the Neponset and help ensure that everyone can enjoy and benefit from this wonderful resource. We will talk about this next.
Hi, I'm Luke Sandinato, a 5th grader at Caldecott Elementary School. Last year in 4th grade, the Milton Garden Club came to our class to talk to us about the Neponset River and increase our awareness of this natural resource in our town. Stewardship is the process of taking care of resources, land, for example. This lesson really taught us to be good stewards, meaning people who practice stewardship.
Think about how this river is special to you, about its historic importance, its value to Milton today, and its vital role in our town's future. The Neponset is our river. Let's learn how we all can be stewards of the river.